Well, first of all, thank you all for coming. I want this to be a very interactive discussion, so I will try to see if you have questions. Just raise your hand. And the talk is malleable, so you're not going to be led to 3,000 slides. I also promise not too many graphs. It's really a discussion, first about basic science, and then the efferent arm, if you want to call it so, where the pharma industry is in the field of type 1 diabetes. So what do we know about type 1 diabetes? Why is it complicated? Many of you will ask, well, if it's an autoimmune disease and there's a cell that recognizes a piece of your body, why can't we just switch the cell off? We know how to do this in vitro maybe reasonably well. And why is a rather seemingly simplistic problem like this not curable? I would say just in the beginning, yes, it's probably an autoimmune disease in certain phases. It's certainly an autoinflammatory disease. We actually know some of the targets that are being recognized, but it's a complicated disease. We have surprises. We had surprises in the past. People who are interested in genetics, they thought, well, this is maybe turning out easy. There's one gene, one disease. Maybe we end up with 2 or 3 genes and we will be done with this. This, in type 1 diabetes, many other of related disorders, is very complicated. Same for MS, same for alopecia. There's genes that determine that whether you get the disease, but we cannot fix all the genes. You cannot fix, the Nobel Prize was just mentioned and given, we cannot fix an immune checkpoint, and then another checkpoint, and then another checkpoint, another checkpoint. By the time you fix all these genes and checkpoints and try to tune them, the patient will long be dead from the therapy. It is absolutely not feasible to fix these polygenetic diseases in an easy way. So that's an important realization. Similar for the environment, we set out already in the early 90s with much enthusiasm with Michael Oldstone to find the virus that's going to cause type 1 diabetes. And we are still at it, but it's a complicated matter. Because the way the field now presents itself is that there's probably not one single virus that causes the disease, but there's maybe an organ that's more susceptible, in this case the islets and the pancreas, to viral infections per se, so that you can expect to find maybe many different viruses that then accelerate the disease. And maybe the way it works in diabetes is not unlike it works in asthma. You develop a condition first, maybe in this case because of an allergy to certain environmental pollutants. And then if you have infections in the lung, that's certainly not going to make the situation any better. And you could say in the diabetic pancreas, probably something similar will happen, because we find here, several of the team have studied this, we find various viruses that can associate with the disease. And you will have personal stories, some of you, where a child got infected with a virus and then a month later there was the diagnosis of diabetes. But it's not as easy, and that's important to realize, that there was one pathogen and then the disease. And if it were as easy, we would have figured this out. Another factor, I thought I show some colors also because colors speak to me in a good way most of the time, is this section of a human pancreas. And what you can see here is, in red is glucagon, blue is the exocrine pancreas that make digestive enzymes, and green is insulin. This is past onset of type 1 diabetes. You can appreciate that the organ is very heterogeneous. It's not uniform at all, right? So you have an area, there's still a lot of insulin. You have areas there's no insulin left, and you have an area there's maybe some insulin left, and then you have areas there's no islets left whatsoever. So when you see this patchy picture, which looks like alopecia to me, the hair loss, you come up with actually a very simple question that we cannot answer. Why is it patchy? If it were just a systemic defect with cells being misregulated in the whole body, this would not be patchy. It would uniformly affect the whole organ. And it's a central question for many autoimmune diseases, also in arthritis. Why one joint? Why not the other joint? Why alopecia here and then not there, then all of a sudden here? We don't know these type of things. This we need to learn. I firmly believe that if we appreciate these things better, we will make better therapies. We have seen, and these are snippets that are therapeutically important, that the beta cell mass, when you look at how it evolves over time in the pathogenesis of type 1 diabetes, it stays up for a very, very long time, as you can see here. probably even in a relapsing, remitting fashion in prediabetes. This is the time when people develop autoantibodies, first 1, then 2, then 3. And after that, the beta cell mass is lost rather precipitously, going to a level at which point the disease is diagnosed, and then it probably swings further down, also in a relapsing, remitting fashion. If that is true, if the beta cell mass undergoes those swings, we have to think about the disease in a different way. First of all, we might have phases in prediabetes where there's no activity of the immune system. So a therapy needs to be there continuously and needs to be safe, because we cannot measure yet when these attacks might occur and wax and wane. The other realization, which I think therapeutically is very important, prevention of the disease should be a generalized health goal, because you can probably till relatively short, prior to the diagnosis of diabetes, preserve a lot of beta cells altogether. Importantly, here at La Jolla Institute, we were the first ones who imaged live the mouse pancreas. So don't think as a human pancreas, that would be nice, non-invasively, but we can only image the mouse pancreas. And we can see how aggressive cells, all the green ones that are engineered in this mouse model, go attack the islet. So you can see this is a 30-minute time lapse in a technology that's called 2-photon. They migrate extremely well from islet to islet and throughout the whole pancreas when you see that. And you can also derive from that the speed and activity of an attack of cells that can move around in the pancreas and how they can reach the islets very well. So we have learned from that it's maybe a general entry of cells that affects whole lobes of the pancreas, like we saw the lobularity before in the human organs. We also learned from that the cells not necessarily enter where the islets are. They might just enter the organ for other reasons and patrol the organ, and then get retained in the islets if they see something that is of interest for them. The key search in all of this is that somehow the islets say, look at, here I am. And we think right now it's a mixture of having the right proteins expressed, probably insulin that's recognized by the immune system, and have certain molecules upregulated that present this insulin better to the immune system. What have we done personally? We have done one trial, and I just put this so you understand the numbers that play a role, and that is actually not necessarily gap, because pharma does this well. We have developed a vaccine that we think can redirect the immune system. Is something we had worked in basic science on for a long time, so that the cells don't attack the islets anymore. That has taken so far 20 million, and we are going into safety trials hopefully next year, if all goes well. Then we have done a combination trial that was, for those who know me, always close to my heart. We combine a GLP-1 drug with an immune modulator, in this case anti-interleukin 21. It had good data, good rationale. This trial is now reporting next year, cost in 360 patients about 60 million. So this is where pharma industry can be good. This is also not necessarily what the gap is, because pharma industry should be doing this stuff. The gaps are in other places, like the one area that I mentioned about finding actually the proper patients. What will the future bring? Here comes your timelines. This is my personal coloring, so we're coming close. You can also debate this, okay? So stem cells in a capsule with enough oxygen, and you can tell this and wave this in front of my face and say, see, Matt, you were wrong. I was wrong on many things. I thought when the first glucose sensor from Dexcom was implanted in rats, we did this with Dexcom in 1996. I thought, well, these glucose sensors, they're never going to work. They're never going to go into patients. And I was dead wrong. So you have to take this with a, and I was okay to be dead wrong. You have to take it with a grain of salt. So that's my view now. And it's actually good. If you prove this wrong, it's good for all the patients at any rate. So I think this still has obstacles, but it's moving in the right way. And there's hope that this is going to come to fruition. I think we will be able to make combination therapies. But the combination therapies, what do they do in recent onset? They preserve beta cell mass. And you can say, well, look, as a patient, that's fine if you preserve some beta cell mass, but the disease is not gone. And that's true. That is that. So this one, of course, in the long run, is much more attractive for everybody who has the disease. This one, if you can move it into prevention, that could be very attractive, because maybe you can push out at least diagnosis of disease in those that have autoantibodies by several years. And TrialNet is working on this. I'm very interested in this. Then, of course, the improvement in terms of insulins, devices, pumps, sensors, closing the loop, artificial intelligence to do that, that is moving ahead. Thank God, is important for the patients. I mean, I don't want you to leave you with the thought that I think this has the most proximal and the most important value for everybody who has type 1 diabetes now, and it is of utmost importance. And it's also in large ways technology driven. We discussed this before, and technology is important. It will make a difference in that.